and then going down to the jacking point where we've got that hole which is developed. We're going to find a lot more of that sort of thing. We're going to do a case study video, I think, on this E39 530 diesel, 2002, owned by one of our technicians, Luke. It's got some nice parts on it. It's a manual 530 diesel sport, AP racing brakes all round, Bilstein B12 kit, I remember, and also IBAC anti-roll bars. So it's quite a cool car. Like I say, manual as well. It's quite rare. 231,000 miles. That he's had for a long number of years. I actually owned it myself before him, and got 231,000 miles, aiming to get to 238 minimum, 238,855, which is the average mileage to the moon from the Earth. So we're keeping it going, or he is keeping it going. So we've done some work last year on the rear seals. The rear seals and jacking points always have problems. There's the jacking pad there. They always corrode around this section and up into the vertical part of the inner seal. So it's had to have a new infill piece just up there. Also a new seal section done underneath. And that was done and decided not to drill through here to create a connection point for the arch liners because they're pretty stiff anyway, and that just adds then 2 more areas of risk. So we did a little repair about a year ago, which is still looking really nice and smart, and it's got some sprayable seam sealer over it, a little bit of body coloured paint, I think, from the other side, and cavity wax inside. And now we're going to be tackling the front section. So the fronts are a little bit harder to do and more hidden because there's some big under trays on the underside of an E39. You've got these normally plastic seals that go down this side, which are off in this picture, but then you've got a big section here on the right hand side. This one needs to come off because the jacking points, which form also part of the seal, the jacking part is the black piece there, and then the seal is this lower part, and you can see it's breaking through the blisters, and the corrosion is coming through the blue paint, and there is a little bit crunchy and loose, jagged seam sealer. So we're going to find out what's going on behind here. We know it needs some work, and Luke is very much wanting to keep and save this car, keep it on the road for a bit longer. It might seem mad, but like I say, there's some great options on here. It's a very cool manual 530D Sport with some cool parts all round, and the seal sections are probably missing on this piece behind the wheel arch liner, where the wheel arch liner would have had fixings to go in, so the wings are going to need some work as well. But this seal section, we're going to see what's going on, whether it's just the outer part of this seal where the jacking point is, or whether it's going to encroach into the main seal section. So covers off next, and then we'll see what's hiding behind. So covers are off. You can see actually how damp it is underneath those covers. That moist mud which is under here, all greasy and wet, compared to the covers where they're not fitted and it's fairly dry. So that is quite a collection point. This is the right hand side seal where it meets the jacking point. You can see bubbling seam sealer here where the corrosion has got underneath that, lifted the seam sealer and paint. On first inspection, although we've got some possible gaps in this area here, which we'll find out when we move the jacking pad shortly, this side looks okay on first inspection. We can see that the front edge of the seal is sort of missing in there. If we peel back the wheel arch liner, it's actually just full of mud. So you could definitely grow some plants in there. So all that mud and wetness, that moisture, is coming out from the pollen filter trays. So if you're cleaning and doing maintenance, it would be, and if you're capable to, my top tip would be to take these wheel arch liners off periodically, maybe every year, every couple of years, clean out all this mud, because that doesn't get there from road driving. That's actually coming from the pollen filter trays. We'll probably do a little video and mix it in now to show you where that probably comes from. So up in the engine bay, where we think this sort of stuff comes from is around the pollen filter housing area. There's 2 on an E39. You've got the right hand side and the left hand side of the vehicle. All around here you get leaves and just general debris and airborne stuff, including water, mud. It turns into all sorts of weird little sort of crustaceans that grow. You can see some of this is probably just airborne stuff, but it looks like dry mud, but I doubt it's actually clumps of mud. It's just years and years worth of dirt and water sort of stuff that come down the windscreen. They land around the back of the pollen filter housing, and then there's a water outlet which is like a little drain system to allow rainwater to escape. It just goes through a little cutout. You can see that there's like a little leaf halfway through there at the moment, that little leaf. So it's a water outlet which drops straight down behind the wing and then goes into that area there, which is meant to then just sort of filter out onto the ground. But obviously all that stuff, you can you can sort of think of it like compost. Although we were calling it mud down here, it probably is some form of compost. It's like decomposed leaf matter, which is built up over the years, which comes down the inside of the wing, and it just all sits there. I suppose the water can get out, but if you've got matter with it as well, it all just stays damp. And I wouldn't necessarily say that was the start of where it all comes from, but it probably doesn't help, because that's what's rotting out the front edge of this sill panel. There's the wing, there's the sill panel. That's why that's rotting out, because of all that collection of wetness just there. And then that stuff, I felt that on the left-hand side. When I put my hand through that hole on the left-hand side, I could feel that same stuff in the sill behind the jacking point. So perhaps that collection of stuff is somehow making its way. I can't say for sure. We'll know the structure once we cut this open a bit more, but possibly some of it is being travelled in the sort of water outlet and somehow staying in the sill. And that dampness is inside there, which is possibly causing the sill and the front jacking point areas to also corrode. So this is going to need some work on the ends of the sill, even if the jacking point survives all the wire wheel process of removing all this corrosion and stuff like that. So we'll find out what we get there. And we were thinking initially it wasn't too bad, you know, it might be structurally okay. Got the diesel Webasto heater up here, the preheater, that's what that little exhaust is, if anybody wonders, unique to the diesel models. And then we get around to the left-hand side where we've taken off the under trays as well, and you can see this side's probably suffering with a similar sort of thing, although much less mud, but there really isn't a great amount left of that metal sill panel. And then you get round to the jacking point, and then it gets a whole lot worse, because it's holed without even really having to get involved with any hammers, tools or anything like that. That was just sort of what came out as we removed the under tray. So that's what you suppose is hiding, and I can feel in there there's a good collection of mud and grit and all sorts of stuff which is trapped inside there. So it's completely moist and damp in that sill, which has been corroding it for a long time. So bear in mind, in the UK, the MOT test station, we're not an MOT station, so I can't speak for every MOT tester, but I believe there is some form of hammer or pick sort of system, which if you see corrosion, you're allowed to tap it with an MOT testing tool. So if somebody saw corrosion, even if it was sort of slightly hiding, and if they could visualize it, I think you are allowed to tap it. So it probably would have gone through. So Luke is on doing the right thing and getting this done before it causes any MOT failures. So wheel arch liners are out, and you can see the collection of mud. It's quite surprising how much this is. You know, it is damp, wet, mud. It's like sand as well, and it's a good old collection in there, stuck around the bottom of the washer bottle. I mean, you can make holes in the stuff. It's a bit weird how much of this stuff is there, but then it's never been off, we don't think, to be cleaned. So it's 20 years worth of collection, which has again come out of that water drain outlet we were talking about in the engine bay by the microfilter housing. There's the output, and you can see it's actually clogged in this part of the vehicle. It's again the same sort of stuff. It's just compost, which has come from leaves that have just sort of deteriorated, and it's just all there, and then just goes behind the wheel arch liner that was there, and then just collects at the lowest point and probably filters back, which might be why again we're seeing this corrosion build up around the front jacking point. So if you have got corrosion around the jacking points, we don't know what this video is going to entail as we go through the process, but take your wheel arch liners out, have a look to see if you've got any of this sort of mud in there, and clear those drains out behind the microfilter housing. Looking round to the left hand side, not so much mud on this side for some reason, but it is still present. There's that wetness, damp stuff, which means that the sill panel is just sort of rotting away, and it's coming out of that drain again, that one there. You can see leaves this side that haven't fully decomposed, and then randomly a hole behind the wheel arch liner, which once upon a time was one of those clipping points, a little 868 plug-in nut where the self-tappers screw into. And that just shows you sometimes, until you actually disassemble a project or even get part way through the job, you just don't know what you're going to be dealing with. You can just come across these random, unexpected holes, and that's very similar with seals, jacking points, things like that. Until you've actually got all of it stripped down and back to bare metal, you actually don't know really what you're going to be dealing with. Front wings are off as well now, so you get actually an interesting perspective view from the side of this, which originally looks like a really big substantial structural seal. Remember, on the E39s they don't have a plastic seal cover like most M cars do. The E39 is completely metal. And when you look at it with the wing fitted, you think this is a huge solid box section, but actually the protrusion at the front of it is very much just a single skin piece. Now you can see that this gap area here, where the wheel arch liner was hiding lots of mud and it was collecting up here, and the washer bottle lives in this area, it's actually not that strong, this front protrusion bit of it, which is good news, because if it's only the front end that you've got corrosion on, it wouldn't take much to actually cut down that join line there, reinstate a new piece, and it really, you're not worrying about what's behind that you're cutting into, because it's hollow. It's only when it gets a little bit further back that it becomes then a box section and what makes up then the real internal seals. And as you can see on this car, it's creeping back, so who knows where we're going to have to do our cut. It doesn't look like there's much correction past that point there, so we just have to see if that creeps into this box piece here, or whether it can all be contained on the front single skin area. But regardless of that, we've still got the jacking point problem to look into as well. And then going over to the left hand side, same sort of thing, just a single skin at this point, which is very crumbly, I'm afraid. It's it's just not structural anymore, so that obviously can't be welded to. That needs new metal put into it. And then going down to the jacking point where we've got that hole which is developed, we're going to find a lot more of that sort of thing. The good thing is the weight of the car is still being supported by the jacking points. They don't seem to have recessed in like the E46 rear ones do, so hopefully whatever internal structure is in there supporting them, that hopefully that's still strong, not corroded through, and it's just then the outer skin work to deal with.